All right, so we'll get started. Thanks everyone for joining. My name is Donna Ringrose and I'm the Executive Director at CMC Canada. And I'm pleased to be hosting today's webinar on the actionable tools for CMC advocacy. As most of you know, hopefully most of you know, recently we've hosted our first ever CMC Hill Day, which was, we'll get into it a bit further, but it was a great success, and it was the first ever Hill Day hosted by this organization. And we want to ensure that we continue with the momentum of advocating for the CMC designation. I had many members reach out to me personally after the CMC Canada Hill Day and the summary that we sent out, wanting to know more, wanting to see how they can get involved. And so today's webinar is a product or a continuation of that momentum in terms of ensuring that we're all equipped with the right tools in order to advocate at all levels of government. So I will introduce our lead today. So you can click over to the next slide, please. So we have Rob Lafort, who will be leading today's webinar. Rob has 15 years of government relations experience at the federal, provincial, and municipal levels in Canada. Provincial work brought him to Ottawa in 2011, where he led government relation efforts for the Canadian Alliance of Student Associations. Rob earned his master's degree in political management at Carleton University. He followed that experience by working with some of Canada's best lobbyists at the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, where he worked on housing, infrastructure, and public safety policy. He went on to work at a national public affairs firm where he became vice president. There, he delivered billions of dollars in investments to client sectors, significant provincial and national legislative victories, and major regulatory reforms in sectors as diverse as housing, construction, transportation, retail, and supply chain, and skills development. He has navigated complicated interprovincial relationships, including shifting procurement policy nationwide through prompt payment legislation, first in Ontario, then federally and across other provinces. Recently, Rob provided strategic guidance and advocacy support to the Canadian Alliance of Student Associations during their campaign and victory to secure $2.7 billion in funding to make federal student loans interest-free, the largest investment in post-secondary affordability in Canadian history. Rob is proud to be leading a growing firm with a diverse clientele. He has built relationships with associations that are mobilizing knowledge about their programs and professions, including ours here at CMC Canada. He helps organizations find common cause within an expansive political network that spans parties and departments in Ottawa. Rob is currently enrolled in the CMC executive program that's taking place tomorrow over the weekend, and looks forward to achieving his CMC designation. So that's a bit about Rob. I will turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Donna. I really appreciate the introduction. It's nice when I don't have to read it myself because it's long and always a little bit embarrassing when you're talking about yourself for that long. So I really appreciate it. I'm thrilled to be here. I'm excited to be working with CMC Canada. And also, I just have to say thank you to any of you who were on the line, who participated in the day on the Hill that we had just a month and a half ago. It was a really, really productive time. I think we had great conversations. I'm excited to talk a little bit more about that. And I'll summarize my role today here too. So I lobby for CMC Canada. We make sure that Donna and members of the board and the other staff have all the tools that they need to be able to go and have productive conversations with members of parliament, senators, political staff, senior civil servants here in Ottawa. But one of the things that we know many of you are doing in your own provinces is you're looking for ways to advance the profession in each province as well. So this is about giving you the tools. My job is certainly to get you excited about advocacy, about lobbying, about doing this work yourself. Definitely to help you feel more confident about going into those conversations and being comfortable talking about the designation, talking about the profession, talking about your work. and then also to inform you about what your obligations are, and how to effectively get in touch with politicians and have meetings with politicians. So if you leave here excited, if you leave here more confident, more knowledgeable, then I've done my job. And I will say too, my plan is to talk for about 45 minutes and then leave some time for questions at the end. I will have an FAQ section where I'm going to answer things that I kind of get most commonly when we're talking about grassroots advocacy. But if we have questions that come up, feel free to drop them into the Q&A throughout the conversation. So I'll be able to tackle all of those at the end so that we have the right flow. As Donna mentioned, we just had a day on the Hill in April. CMC Canada hosted its event where CMC's members of the board, members of the Eastern Ontario chapter came to Ottawa to advocate for the CMC designation on Parliament Hill. There were meetings, there was a networking event, and consultants were able to share some of their insights and propose policy solutions with decision makers. And I'll go into that in a bit more detail. You might ask yourself, we're management consultants. What are we advocating for? What is it that we would want from the government? What are we asking? You're not always asking for a contract or funding. Oftentimes you're asking for them to get more informed, to get more educated, to change policies, to change programs, and to change regulations or laws. So one of the big challenges that was identified in the lead up to the Hill Day, and I think, everyone is pretty aware of this, especially with government contracting, is the profession has a front page problem. So how do we combat that front page problem facing management consulting? When projects go well, when engagements are running smoothly, and everyone's getting good value for money, or good ROI, there isn't a lot of concern around management consulting. But when some firms, some individuals, and some procurement processes go awry, and the value for money is not delivered, especially for taxpayers, that's when big issues hit the front page. So, if everything's going well, no news. When things go poorly, big news. And dollar amounts tend to actually be commensurate with that. So if the taxpayer's on the hook for $1 billion, you can guarantee that's going to be on the front page of the Globe and Mail. We also wanted to promote a plan to hire ethical consultants through federal procurement rules and increase the knowledge of the CMC designation among procurement officials. And then finally, there was a decision made in the early spring, to cut the funding of the Management Advisory Service program. And we wanted to go back and ask the departmental officials, politicians, political staff to reverse that decision. So those are some of the priorities that we were talking about on the Day on the Hill. In terms of meetings, this was CMC Canada's first Day on the Hill, and we had 19 participants, if you include Donna, going to meetings with elected officials and civil servants. You can see some of the elected officials that we met with there. But for that number of people, for that size of a group, we had 17 meetings, which is a really good, positive result, with elected officials, political staff, and senior public servants. Some of the highlights, we met with the Director of Policy and Operations to the Minister of National Revenue. We met with the Senior Policy Advisor to Chrystia Freeland, Senior Policy Advisor to Anita Anand, who's the President of the Treasury Board. We also met with the Policy Advisor to the Minister of Rural Economic Development, which I can talk a little bit more with regard to the MAS program later on. And we had FaceTime with Assistant Deputy Ministers of PSPC and Directors General for Procurement for IRCC, Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship Canada. So at a Day on the Hill, your goal is to expand your reach. Your goal is to bring people to Ottawa to have more meetings, more FaceTime, more exposure than you would typically get if, just myself or just Donna we're going to meet with 1 or 2 MPs. By bringing everybody together, by bringing all those resources to bear at the same time, you get a better outcome, you get better exposure, you get more potential champions that you can call upon when those meetings go well. Upon completion of those meetings, we asked the participants in those meetings to fill out feedback forms, which gave us a little bit of data to work with. It's a pretty small sample size, but it gives us a sense of what the baseline is and where we need to go in the future. So because we have a first Hill Day, we want to make sure that we're getting better and better every year. When somebody met with an MP, they would bring back the information to us so that we can catalog it. If they offered specific advice, if they gave a certain recommendation about what kinds of actions to take on, what our next step should be, we recorded that, we wrote back to them, and in over 75% of the cases, we had some form of follow-up action that was requested by those officials. To me, having done this for 15 years, 75% is a very, very good response rate in terms of MPs, political staff asking you to do more, asking you to follow up with them. You want to get, as close to 100% as you can. Normally, I would probably see around 50% of cases asking for some sort of follow-up. So officials tended to be receptive to CMC Canada, but they did not tend to have a high level of knowledge of CMC Canada. After the meetings that we had with them, most seemed very supportive of the designation. So, the challenge here is not a lack of quality or a lack of value in the designation or a lack of value in management consulting. It's just a lack of awareness about what it is that CMCs do and what the designation means and how much the profession contributes value to the government. So very good news, I think, on that score, but we want to make sure that the numbers are always increasing and that we've got a high level of CMC Canada knowledge into the future. So you might be wondering, why am I here? Why are we bringing people in from outside? We just did a big advocacy event. Why do we need to do more? Grassroots advocacy is absolutely critical, and the most effective advocacy groups in Ottawa all do some form of grassroots advocacy. If I could pick one that I think has probably a high level of visibility, it would be the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. So FCM will do their Hill Day every year at the end of November or early December. But throughout the year, their members, their city councilors, mayors, they're going out and they're talking to MPs on a regular basis about why municipalities need more infrastructure money, why they need more money for policing, why they need more support for combating hate and online harms and the criticism particularly leveled against women politicians that's causing a lot of women not to run or reoffer for office. Those are all things that they have local support for. And MPs, when you go to meet them, they are going to care a lot more about the issues that are affecting people in their riding. So if I go into a meeting, with an MP and I'm there on behalf of CMC Canada, and the next week I'm there on behalf of another client, they're going to start to say and start to wonder, hey, lobbyist Rob, who are you here for today? Who are you representing? We want to get more face time, more exposure to management consultants directly, to CMCs directly, for those politicians. So when they know that an issue is affecting you as a constituent, they can put a face on it. And when they put a face on it, they want to see, they want to know that somebody from their area who votes, who is possibly able to help them get reelected, is caring about these issues too. So you have a lot more power to tell your story than I do. I will say, your experiences, you've got years and years of experiences as a management consultant, as a CMC, knowing the difference between CMCs and other types of people who call themselves consultants. You can tell that story in a persuasive, effective manner, and our job is to help you do that. So the advocacy kit that we've created with CMC Canada, you'll be able to use that to make sure that you have really successful meetings. Taking part in grassroots advocacy isn't just good for the association, it's also good for you. This is something that we think helps to build your own personal professional capacity. It's a new skill, it's new knowledge. So by all means, take some of the strategies that we learn or that we teach in terms of lobbying and advocacy and apply it to your own practice, apply it to your own ability to go after clients. It's very similar to sales advocacy is. You want to make sure that you are building trust, building relationships, you don't want to just come with your hand out and ask for something. What is the quid pro quo? What is the trade-off? How can you have a mutually beneficial relationship? That's really what helps in the long term. So the fact that you are from the riding or from the region is going to be much more appealing to an MP, especially if you meet them locally. We have developed the CMC Canada Advocacy Toolkit. The QR code there will take you directly to the toolkit online. It's a PDF document, and I'll be walking through sections of it, but I'm not going to read it all out verbatim. That would take a little bit longer, and you all can do that yourselves. I want to talk about the high level pieces, the most important pieces, and then if you folks have questions, you can ask at the end, or you can always hit me up independently if you're interested in going and doing some of this one-on-one lobbying. So by all means, I'll leave that up there for another 5 seconds so people can get the QR code. And I'll keep going. Oh, pardon me. We've talked a little bit about why to do local advocacy already, but some of the other pieces that are in the toolkit are steps for requesting a meeting, steps for preparing for a meeting. So once you've secured it, how do you get ready? And then a guide to successful meeting. So once you're in the meeting, how do you make sure that it flows well? There'll be some lobbying do's and don'ts, just some common mistakes that people make, and some important things that you have to keep in mind when you're going to advocate. And then I'll go through the key messages that we have in the toolkit, as well as a couple of helpful reminders at the very end. So why do local advocacy? As I mentioned, you got to cast a wider net, you got to educate more officials. Personalizing the issue, I think, is one of the most important things. So, we could send a great policy paper, to a politician and say, hey, read this. You should make this change. They might read it. They might agree. They might get excited about it. They might then take action. But if you have 30 minutes or an hour one-on-one with a politician, the chances of them listening to you, them being able to take part in a dialogue and ask clarifying questions, the meeting is extremely valuable. And personalizing the issues so that it's not just about what's written down on the page, what the policy recommendation is, but your own experiences. The stories are what people tend to remember. So we could say, you'll get better results with a CMC, or if a CMC comes to your office as a politician and tells you about experiences that they've had where they've had to come and clean up some other consultant's mess, or where they've had really strong results that have resulted in better outcomes for a department at a lower cost, those are the kinds of stories that are really going to resonate with the politicians, and that's what they want to hear. So creating a local connection and building the brand for CMC Canada. If Donna or if we're just sending, letters on behalf of CMC Canada to MPs, and they get a letter and they say CMC Canada at the top of it, but they've never met a CMC, or they don't know what CMCs do, it's less impactful. Whereas if they can go back and say to themselves, oh my goodness, I met with a CMC in my office, a couple of months ago, it's going to resonate, it's going to be present in their mind, and it's going to be something that they understand better over the long term. We certainly want to find new champions on Parliament Hill. We have actually encountered MPs who are on relevant committees who previously served as CMCs. We want to expand that to understand, how many more MPs worked as consultants or have contributed as consultants. There are a few that I know of that I can think of who we haven't reached out to yet, but we certainly will be in the next little while. For you folks, when you're out doing individualized, personalized advocacy, you'll be able to learn more and share more back with CMC Canada over the long term. So hopefully by the time next spring rolls around, we're getting ready for an election, we will know how many members of Parliament are or have been consultants or CMCs. So now that you're excited, now that you're thinking to yourself, okay, I can probably go do this. I understand the value for the profession. I understand how that's going to help me. Your next step is to ask for a meeting. So whether you are in Red Deer or Iqaluit or Musquodoboit Harbor, you can go online, go to parle.gc.ca, the House of Commons website, and click on members and then find my member of parliament. In that search box, if you were to put in your address or your postal code, your MP is going to pop up. So once you do that and you know who your MP is, you'll say to yourself, okay, this is a Liberal, this is a Conservative, this is an NDP, a Blockiste. Maybe you have an independent member of parliament or a Green member of parliament. You got to consider, how do you reach out to them? So once you found their email, in the advocacy kit, there's a template email that you can copy to request a meeting with them. You can personalize that as much as you want, especially if you know the individual, if you know the MP, or if there are things that you've worked on recently that they're passionate about. Those are good ways to make your request stand out and get your request put at the top of the pile. As we're coming up to the summer, all of these meetings I expect will take place in constituency offices or virtually over Zoom or Teams. So use the template meeting request that's in the kit. But if you want to give it a little bit more pizzazz, a little bit more personality, by all means, we just want to give you an easy place to start. And then when you've asked for a meeting, one of the things that I think a lot of people get caught off guard by is just how many requests members of parliament get. It's not uncommon to have to follow up 2 or 3 or 4 times before they're going to say yes to a meeting. So you've got to get them to understand that it's important to meet with you. You also are at the mercy of their calendar, and MPs are some of the busiest people in the country. Trying to get calendar time with them is challenging. So you might have to follow up, present different options for times on multiple occasions. Don't be shy. It's their job to listen to you. You as a constituent have important things to bring to their attention. So I would just say, be diligent. And if the emails aren't working, when you go to this Find Your MP tool, you can also find the phone number for their constituency office and give them a call to follow up. Once you've got a meeting secured, you have to prep for that meeting. So the most important thing is to review your materials, review the advocacy toolkit, review any documentation that CMC Canada has shared for you in order to be able to take that to the meeting and present it. Look up the MP, try to find more information about them, get biographical information about them wherever possible. Wikipedia is good for a lot of politicians, but some politicians still aren't going to be covered on Wikipedia. So you might have to go to their political party website to find their profile. Many of them have their own websites where they've got a lot more biographical information on them. It's a little bit more of a feature, a little bit more long form on them, as opposed to the snippets that you see political parties put up for each candidate. So try to understand their biographical information so that you know a little bit about their work experience, a little bit about their life, and you can make the presentation and the content they're sharing more relatable. I would also say use CMC Canada for support. So if you want to go to a meeting and you've got one confirmed and you say, I don't know what to talk about, I've looked at their bio, I don't know how to spin this or how to position it with them, or maybe I can't find any information on them. Do you have any information? Use CMC Canada, and CMC Canada and myself and my team will work with you to make sure that you're well prepared to attend those meetings. Then, it may sound like a no-brainer, but I've certainly heard this happen before. Somebody's supposed to go to 14 Maple Lane and they end up going to 14 Maple Street. Just make sure you've got the correct address and you can get there easily. If it's a virtual meeting, make sure you've got the right link. Make sure that you tested it out. Make sure that that you can log in on the technology that you plan to use for that meeting. So, you're not switching back and forth between your iPad and your webcam or your phone just because the links are off or something's not working. Do a test run and make sure that you're giving yourself plenty of time to prepare beforehand. So you certainly don't want to be late, but you want to get there early enough that you can, just double check everything, go through your presentation and consider what your next steps will be. Once you're in a meeting, I'm just going to take a quick swig. Once you're in a meeting and they've said yes, and you've prepared for it, and you get face to face with the politician, make sure to spend a little bit of time on introductions, probably 2 to 3 minutes, just so that they know who you are, who you represent, what kind of work you do, and the fact that you're a CMC. I'm not going to tell you have to have a firm handshake or anything, or you got to like maintain eye contact or, any of those professional habits that we all, approach differently. But make sure you get to know them a little bit as a person before expanding. And I would say it's always good to double check to make sure that you know how much time they have. So, introduction. Hi, I'm Rob, president of First Lake Solutions. I'm here today to talk about XYZ. I just want to make sure I have 30 minutes on my calendar for this. Do you have 30 minutes? Will we be able to go for the whole time? Just so that they don't cut you off halfway through and they say, oh, well, I actually have to go for this other thing. I've got a meeting I got to get to. Make sure that you check with them how much time they have to start. It's courteous, but it also helps you plan to get through your agenda for the meeting faster. Then I would say get them talking. A few years ago, I worked with a group of post-secondary advocates who went into a meeting with the Minister of Employment and Social Development Canada, and they had half an hour, and they were like, we got to get through this. They made a list of everything that they wanted to talk about. They assigned tasks. They said, here's who's going to talk about each thing. They went into the meeting, guns blazing, and at 2 minutes left in the meeting, the minister turns to them and says, well, would you like to hear, what I think about these issues? Because, you've just been talking for 28 minutes and I haven't really been able to say anything at all. So try to get them talking at the outset, ask them questions. This brings us to item 3, finding out their level of knowledge. What do you know about the CMC designation? Do you know anyone who's a CMC? What's your feeling about management consulting in general? And, how familiar are you with the organization or with our priorities? If you can find out the answers to those questions, it'll tell you where you need to start in your conversation. And then it'll also give you an idea of like where they might be already kind of going in their head. They will certainly give you hints about what their preconceived notions are, what their biases are, and what their level of confidence is that you're going to be able to deliver something effective that you can both work on together. So find out that level of knowledge, get them talking. If you're just lecturing the whole time, it's going to be a bad experience for them. It's going to be tough for them to feel like they are part of solving the problem. But if you can get them talking and get them saying, you should do this, you should do that, especially if they bring up things that you want them to do, you're in a good position to have a constructive dialogue about what the next step should be and how they can help you. Talk about the problems. So you're familiarized, you know kind of what their level of knowledge is. Talk about problems first. Most MPs, senators, political staff, bureaucrats, they are problem solvers. It might not seem like that day to day, but personality wise, they want anybody who walks through their door to feel like they're leaving better informed, with more better ideas about how to tackle this issue, especially if it's public policy issues. So if you were to say something like, we don't think the government is getting the best bang for buck from consultants because procurement policies are not well aligned with ethical consulting practices, that is a problem. But what is the problem beyond that? Who does it affect? How many people are affected by it? What are the outcomes for Canadians? How many taxpayer dollars are being lost on these initiatives because of those procurement processes? So all of those things are the problems that you need to talk about, to explore, to expand. Once you've talked about the problems, then you can start talking about solutions. So if they don't agree that there's a problem, then it doesn't make sense that you would start talking about the solution immediately. If you come into a meeting and you start talking about solutions right away and you say, we need, $4 million to build a new baseball, soccer field, and practice facility in our community, they're going to say, Oh my goodness. I didn't even know that there was a need for a baseball diamond, a soccer pitch, and a practice facility. You've got to make the argument for why before you ask them, the what for the item, for the solution. So when you talk about your proposed solutions, present them in a way that talks about the benefits locally. How can this change help people in our community? Whether it's saving taxpayer money, or it's making sure the procurement processes are done more effectively, or it's educating civil servants about the CMC designation, or maybe it's helping business startups and scale ups by investing more money in management advisory services. Those are all good solutions. You have to talk about why the solution is important for the person you're talking to. How does it help their political career? How does it help them go back to their constituents and say, hey, I've been doing a great job on this? Those are things to think about. Making a concrete ask is key. If you don't have a concrete ask, if you don't have something specific to ask them to do or action for them to take, that's, you don't have a good point of follow-up. And you want to make sure that you have good points of follow-up. That's where the word relations comes from in government relations. Our job is to establish an ongoing dialogue with the politicians so that they come to CMC Canada when they have questions about management consulting. We can go to them when we have, recommendations about what to say and what to do. So your concrete asks could be anything from, would you be willing to put forward a private member's bill, a piece of legislation, or would you write to the minister? Would you write to the minister responsible for this to ask her to make new investments in the management advisory services? Those kinds of concrete asks make it a lot easier for them to understand exactly what it is they should be doing, because most people on Parliament Hill who get lobbied, somebody coming to them, they just say the problem, and then they say, we need this fixed. And then the politicians think to themselves, okay, I don't know how to fix that. But if you tell them exactly how to fix it and you give them that concrete ask, then they can start really helping you push the issue forward. One other component of a successful meeting is getting a photo. And this didn't used to always be the case. Some MPs were a little bit wary of getting their photo with groups, but now in our world of ubiquitous social media, if you can get a photo and you can either share it with Peggy or share it with Donna, so that we've got copies of it in the CMC Canada office, then CMC Canada can put it into its correspondence with politicians or onto social media. If you want to post that to your social media on your own, just make sure you're tagging CMC Canada, tagging the politician, so that we can repost it. Part of our communication strategy over the next year is making more exposure, making more visibility with politicians, and trying to leverage their networks too, because they can get the word out there that CMC is a good designation, that more management consultants should have it, and they reach a wider audience. So we're piggybacking on the strength of the people that you're meeting with, but photos are really, really important. Finally, report back and follow up. I would say lobbying is a lot like an iceberg. Like the meeting is kind of the 10% that you see above the water, right? I spend probably 55 hours a week working in this business, and I'd say maybe 2 or 3 is in face-to-face meetings with politicians on a weekly basis. So the amount that you are actually in that meeting is small relative to all the lead up to it, but the report back and the follow-up is vital. So if CMC Canada sees, okay, you met with MP Ruby Sahota and you had a great conversation on social media, it's awesome that you posted the photo and that we can see it on social media, but it's even better if you can report back to CMC Canada and say, I had this meeting, it went really well. Here are the things we talked about. Here's the follow-up. Here are the next steps, so that we can actually help you do some of the follow-up, and that CMC Canada can establish and maintain and keep that relationship with that MP. So your reporting back is absolutely vital. I've just got a couple more slides here, and then I will get to the Q&A. here are a few do's and don'ts. So you've had you've got your meeting. You want to make sure you get there early and that you travel light. I think you know, you don't want to be carrying a big suitcase into your meeting. Just, you know, a book like a notepad book for it, and a pen just to make sure that you're taking notes as you go. You definitely want to have, I think, a watch on so that you keep track of the time, make sure that you're using it well. And then I would also add, you have, you know, you don't want to just seem disorganized or jumbled or that kind of thing. And traveling light kind of lends to your credibility there. Bring your ID. Sometimes some buildings and sometimes some offices will require you to show your identification to prove that you are who you say you are when you're coming to meet them. There is a little bit of a higher level of security and more wariness from MPs these days. And then this might be the most important, is treat the staff with kindness and respect. So political staff typically are younger, although they tend to skew a bit older in the constituency offices. They are the gatekeepers. They're the ones whose job it is to say yes to the next meeting if you've had a productive meeting with CMC Canada representatives or management consultants. If your meeting doesn't go well, if you don't treat them with kindness and respect, they might say no next time. It's not the MP that reads all the emails that come in to say whether or not they're going to have a meeting with somebody. It's a member of their staff team. And usually that member of their staff team is the first person that you see when you walk in the door. So if you can be nice to them, respectful to them, kind to them, they're going to be more likely to open the door in the future. And especially if the MP commits to something like writing a letter to a minister or moving a new piece of legislation or drafting a bill or doing some research for you, you're not going to be after the fact, and our team is not going to be after the fact working directly with the MP on it. We'll be working with the staff. So if the staff decide, you know, you're not respectful, you're not kind, you're not somebody we want to work with, then all of your effort has been, you know, for naught. So that's probably the most important one here. Although reviewing your talking points in advance is also key. I think, you know, you don't want to run into these things, you know, empty-handed or unprepared. That's only going to hurt you. I'll also say if there's another CMC near you in your riding, in your jurisdiction that you want to bring to a meeting, it can be very empowering to have more than one person there. It's good if you forget something, if you fall back on something, you know, you can use another person to help you. Don'ts are key. Don't rush. So if you're rushing, it's going to be hard for that person on the other side of the table to understand you and to get what it is that you're trying to convey. You have half an hour. Try to get your talking points as succinct as possible and rehearse them a little bit. Be ready and plan. Our team is available to help you prepare for meetings with politicians. So if you say to me, you know, next week I've got a meeting with MP Randy Hoback, right? We met with him this past Hill Day. I've got a meeting with him next week. He wants to talk about XYZ. Can you help me prepare? We can run through a quick training session with you to just help you be ready for that conversation. Don't make up facts. You really don't want to be making up facts. If they ask you, you know, how much money can a CMC help a government procurement save on a $6 million plan, you know, it's hypothetical. It's not something you necessarily know the exact answer to. You could use a case from the past that you've worked on where you could make a suggestion. But if you don't have the answer to something, it's totally fine to say to them, I don't have the answer in front of me right now, or I don't have that information right now. What I'd like to do is do the research and come back to you and share that with you. And we can help you do the research as well. So if they have a question, let us know what that question is and we can help them answer it. What you want to create is a cycle of meetings, follow-ups, more meetings, follow-ups. And as you get more meetings and more follow-ups, you're creating more opportunities with other offices and departments that is gaining traction for the issue and for the priorities that you've set. So if you don't make up the facts, then we can follow up with new data, new facts, new information that is going to be helpful to them, and it's more likely to create a back and forth dialogue. I mentioned this off the top. don't forget to check to see how much time they have for the meeting. And then finally, don't assume you know the outcome of the meeting based on the party. I, in 2009, went to a meeting with a conservative senator, walked in there and thought, okay, we're asking for way too much. We're asking for, you know, hundreds of millions of dollars for student grants, more money for student financial aid, changes to the copyright law. Like there's a lot here. And I was like, I don't think this conservative senator is really going to go for this. But at the end of the meeting, the conservative senator turned to us and said, this is about education. How much would it cost just to make education free in Canada? And I'd like to get some information on that, I was surprised, but I was glad that I didn't assume I knew the outcome of the meeting. I would just say there is probably as much difference within every political party in Canada from left to right on the spectrum as there is between the parties too. So there's a significant overlap between Liberal and NDP MPs in terms of their ideology, even some NDP and some Conservatives on some issues, and then Liberals and Conservatives on issues as well. So just be ready to have a very open, frank discussion, and don't anticipate it's going to be good or bad based on, your preconceived notions. If you ask for a meeting and they say yes, they're going to take it. That means they want to talk to you. They understand that what you have to say is important and they think it's valuable. So they wouldn't do that. They're just too busy if they didn't want to talk to you. Some key messages. So this is contained in the document, and we also will make available to you a briefing note that we used on Parliament Hill in April. Who is CMC Canada? What is the CMC designation? Our primary goal here is to educate elected officials about the designation and about CMC Canada. You are competing with the likes of Barrick Gold, the restaurant, the Canadian Restaurant Association, Restaurants Canada. You're competing with big insurance companies. Like all of these groups that are pretty well known, they're competing for mind share. So you need to explain quickly, succinctly, what is CMC Canada? What is the designation? What does that mean to you? Why do you have it? And then one of the great things that I think that discussion will do is it'll turn into a discussion about the Code of Professional Conduct. What is it that sets CMCs apart from other management consultants? We've got a lot to talk about there. And then I'd also say it's important to emphasize that you're third-party problem solvers and you're not contractors. So when the government needs to bring in extra hands, like to build the Phoenix Pay system or to build the ArriveCan app, they're bringing in extra hands. That could be contracting out jobs. But what we want to talk about is that the CMC designation, when you're a CMC and the government hires you, that really is, they're contracting in your experience and they're not contracting out jobs. Because, a lot of, especially the public sector unions, they will push back and say, you shouldn't be working with consultants. You should be hiring more people to do the jobs that you need to do in the federal public service. And, I'm not going to weigh in on that personally, but contracting in experience and expertise is very different than just saying we're going to hire 3 or 4 more people in the department to do what needs to get done. You certainly want to be highlighting the value add of CMCs, of the designation, but also of you as a CMC. What is it that you bring to the table? You ideate, you identify the problems, and then you create a plan to solve those problems. That's very different than coming in and being, one extra horse to pull the government's cart or the department's cart. And I know we've only got a couple minutes left here before questions, but in terms of policy considerations, we'd like to see some preference on federal contracts for consultants who adhere to an ethical code with their clients. And we'd also like to see the government increase funding to the MAS program. So here are a couple of FAQs. Do you have to register to lobby? I have to register to lobby because I'm getting paid to do it. If you as a volunteer and a member of CMC Canada are going to talk to a politician because you're passionate about this organization, you're passionate about the profession, you're not getting paid to go do that. You do not have to register to lobby. The test, one of the first things it starts with is you're being financially compensated for this. If you as a consultant are spending more than 20% of your time lobbying or going and talking to elected officials or even political staff and bureaucrats, you should probably consider lobbying, but on your own. But I don't think anyone should be worried that by taking part in grassroots advocacy, you're gonna be getting in trouble. You're gonna be on the wrong side of the lobbying commissioner. It is totally within your rights as a local resident to go and talk to your local MP about issues that are concerning to you, and you're not going to have to register. If you're already registered to lobby for a client and you're a consultant, you should be registering or at least reporting your meetings on behalf of CMC Canada. When is a good time to reach out? There's no time like the present. We know that MPs are heading into their summer break. Over the next couple of months, they will start to take more meetings. Usually they'll be mostly off the last week of June, and then they'll go to a bunch of barbecues on Canada Day, and then they'll tend to take a bit of time off. This gives us a really nice runway to start planning meetings and preparing for them. So if you can make a request to your member of parliament over the next couple of weeks, it would be fantastic if we had 10 or 15 meetings between CMCs and their local MPs between now and the end of August. That would be a really good goal. And then we're going to try to get you folks, if you're really involved, more involved, right? We'll have the Hill Day in the future. We've got an election coming up next year, so talking to candidates is important. But good time to reach out right now. Next best time tomorrow. After that, the sooner the better that you can do that outreach to ask for a meeting. Then this is the most challenging question. What if I have a meeting and the conversation isn't going well? They're just sitting back like this. They're a little bit grumpy. They're getting mad at you. They're saying like, I can't believe you'd come and ask for this. Management consultants, we just don't need them. We need more staff in the public service. That's okay. They're allowed to have that opinion, and some of them certainly will. But if you feel uncomfortable, if you feel unsafe, if you feel like the conversation's not going where you need it to, just pause and say to them something along the lines of, it feels to me like we're not really seeing eye to eye here. I respect your opinion and I'm gonna keep mine. What I want to make sure we don't do is leave this off on a bad foot because we've had some sort of argument or disagreement. But I think what I'd like to do is just respectfully shake hands and say, thank you very much for your time. I do appreciate you hearing me out. Like, that's the most mature response. That's the easiest out. It's the best way to get yourself out of there without getting into trouble or ending up on a politician's bad side and hurting the brand. So I'll leave it there. It's time for some Q&A. I have one question in the chat. Are we registered as lobbyists? Appreciating there's a distinction between advocacy and lobbying. I'm answering this live. Yes, the distinction is paid, and then if you are not being paid, you are a volunteer and not a lobbyist. Are there any other questions? I'll keep an eye on the Q&A in the chat.
Well, thanks, Rob. That was informative, and I'm happy that we're now at this phase of our work together and for this organization in terms of being able to build on a solid foundation that we've been able to create this last year together.
Thank you so much, Donna. And I'll just remind everyone, we'll be sending out the advocacy toolkit. Take a look at it. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to get in touch.
Great. Well, if everyone always likes a little extra time, so if that's all we have today and there's no further questions, then I'd like to thank everyone once again for joining today's webinar. We will be sending a follow-up email with resources. They'll be posted on our website, and more to come, certainly in this area. We'd love your support in terms of advocating locally, so please do reach out to either myself or Rob or both of us, and together we'll be able to spread the great news of the CMC designation and raise the awareness. So thanks everyone for joining. Thanks Rob for your time today, and have a great rest of your day. Thank you.
You take care.